Yo, so I'm gonna talk about an experience that I had when I first got into property. So I'm gonna talk about the deal that was my first ever deal that I sold to an investor. So yeah, I can remember working really hard trying to, sell my first deal. Managed to find a deal, managed to find an investor, got a phone call. Yeah, look, offer can be accepted for this price. You can have it. Fuck, brilliant. My first deal, driving taxis at the time, sold a deal for £3,000. Now, £3,000 for something that didn't really require me to do a lot of work was mind blowing to me. Managed to find an investor, so 3K sourcing fee. I had a 2K project management fee, which was again, extra. I thought brilliant. I'll project manage this easy, and yeah, I can go on and start doing this. So when I look back at it, it was crazy because I'd sold the deal, and it was to an investor that I'd met at a networking event, and I had everything set up. I had a team in place that I could use, and I was so confident that I could deliver this property for the investor, and they could make real good money on it, or they were going to refinance it, right? But obviously we had a couple of exit strategies that we were going to use. Either flip it, sell it, or we were going to run it as an Airbnb. So, okay, great. Investors paid. Now it's time to get down to business. So I dealt with a builder that had previously done a job for me. So he had delivered a project for me. Now, was the project up to standard? Really? No. But because he was already doing work for me, it felt to me that it made sense for him to come over and do this work. Um, but it wasn't until I was probably about three quarters of the way through my own deal. So, I was fairly happy with the finish and stuff like that. And I thought, well, yeah, for this deal, I can definitely use this builder. He's going to be trustworthy, going to be able to, go on. It shouldn't be any issues or any problems. So, okay. So when we first went to view the property, instead of the builder coming with me, he sent his like sideman type thing. So he had then given me a quote of what, works would cost on that property. So I had scheduled it all in, packaged it up and sent it to the investor. Yeah, I'm happy to deal with this. Okay, brilliant. So we're coming towards the end of my project now with this builder, and the finish isn't amazing, right? It's average, bang average, and it's like, I don't know whether I've made the right decision here. So anyway, we get into the deal with the investor. All happy, I'm very excited. Obviously, it's my first ever deal that I've sold to an investor. I've been in the game for quite a while. I've bought a couple of properties, and now it was time for me to bring in another stream of income. This could be a way that I can go down and make some money. Okay, great. So I remember getting into the property, and the first day we had gone there, we had paid a deposit. The investor had paid a deposit to the builder the first day, and he didn't turn up. And I kind of knew from there it was going to be a bit of a problem. So anyway, a couple of days went, I was chasing him, ended up coming. So anyway, came for a week or so, ripped the place out. Didn't come back then for a few days, and wasn't as proactive as what he has been. During this time then, we have found some issues that I didn't pick up when I first viewed the property. So by me being inexperienced, I missed some things for the renovation. One being the outside of the single extension. There's a big crack. I say big crack, it was a fairly strong crack, but nothing that I thought would be major. So by the time we had completed on it, it got a little bit worse. We got into the bathroom, where the bathroom was on the back of the property. That's where the little crack was. Water had been penetrating through that crack for quite some time. So when we had pulled some tiles off the wall, we realized that the whole bathroom was ruined. It was soaking. So that meant that we had to go back to brick in that area. So that was an extra cost that I'd missed. Now, for me, being in this game myself, being a developer, and then understanding that you've told an investor it's going to cost you this much, and now you've got to try and go back on your word and say, oh look, really sorry, but this is going to cost you an extra 2.5, 3 grand. It's not a great place to be when you're a sourcer, right? So understanding and being able to spot everything is so important. So that was one problem we had. Another problem we had then was, as above the staircase, there was a bit of a stain, and I was pretty curious to what it was at the start when I went to view it, but I thought, oh, it can't be anything too bad. Later on, I realised that when we pulled the hatch back to get into the attic, the chimney was soaking. Chimney was ruined. So the stack was really wet, which obviously told me that the chimney needed to be replaced. Another price that needed to be added to the renovation cost. So I didn't tell the investor about this, and I didn't tell him until the end of the job. But I discussed with the neighbour then, and we had to get scaffolding up and drop the chimney, which cost, I think, just over £2,000. So I fronted £1,000 of my money from the project management fee or the sourcing fee for this. And then I also put money towards sorting all the rendering out the back, which was hacking it all off, getting rid of all the waste, and then re-rendering it. So that was around another, I think, £900. All because I was inexperienced, didn't know how to spot any problems when it came to actually viewing properties and really diving deeper into problems that can happen. I just thought, it'll be okay, it'll be fine. Wouldn't, and it's come back. Luckily, I say luckily, it happened on my first renovation. So obviously from then I learned so much. But when you're starting and you're doing all your education and you're getting mentored and you're doing everything, it's awesome to get that prior knowledge and get real prior knowledge, because if you've just got an idea from theory, then when you actually get into a property, you're not going to really know much, and you're not going to be able to spot problems. Because I had done some development before I started selling deals, but I still was really inexperienced and I hadn't been trained properly in this demeanor. So I'd ended up spending, I had 5k for the sourcing fee and the project management fee. Near enough 2k of that was gone. Straight away, gone. Because I was trying to keep my relationship with the investor, so that I thought that they were going to buy multiple deals now. They're going to build a portfolio in Swansea and I will be their sourcer. Didn't work out because of my inexperience when it came to the renovation side. Everything else stacked. So when we finally got around to finishing the renovation, the investor had spent an extra, I want to say £5,000 or £6,000 all in for the bathroom and some other little bits that I'd missed, which, isn't ideal at all. But I had also fronted 2k of my money. So I'd been involved in this deal from day one through to day, I want to say it took us, 6 months, because during this 6 months, we had paid the builder and they had said, this is going to be this price. And then we're having, we're going back and forth having arguments because they had told me a price and then they're trying to tell me it's more of a price. And then the first guy has quoted it wrong and, it's going to cost a lot. Well, this is what you got to think of, guys. When you're going to work with a builder, you're going to work with someone, even though I had done a previous job with this builder, which was fairly okay, you never really know. And so it's so important to have the right contractor, know how to sniff out the right contractor, and have payments in there, have stage payments and everything like that, because we had paid too much of a deposit up front too. So I'm chasing the builder constantly then, and it was probably 6 months in the property industry where I thought, I don't think this is for me. Chasing all of this and doing all of this for the money that I was going to make. In the end, I made £3,000 in just over 6 months, all trying to salvage the relationship with me and the investor. You've got to know exactly how you go from A all the way through to B, C, D, E, F, G. From the start of the renovation, from the time that you pick the keys up, what you need to be doing from the day you pick the keys up all the way through to refinancing or selling. And it's so important to get this right at the start, because you don't want to be getting into a deal like me, like I did when I first started, and end up having to pay money to try and keep your relationship with the investor. Because you could fall on one investor. Now I may have fluffed my lines with that investor, because I know they had some good money behind them. But because I didn't deliver on everything that I promised, then it didn't work out too bad in the end, because they got a little bit more than what I first anticipated for the end value. So when I was finding end values, and still to this day when I'm finding end values, I'm very conservative on my figures. So I want to give the best chance, the likely chance, and the worst chance. So I give all three options to the investor. Look, best case scenario, we're going to get 250 grand. Likely case, we're probably going to get around 240, or 245. So you're giving them an idea. And then worst case, look, if everything goes to pot and I'm completely out, and we get a valuer that is very harsh, and times change in the 6 months drastically, you're going to be looking at 235 or 230. So when you're dealing with investors, you're being so transparent that if anything does happen, you've said, look, you can look back at your conversations with them, or you can look back at the deal that you packaged, and you say, look, this is what we've weathered for. We've told you this is going to happen. When you're having a renovation and you've had a quote from a builder and you've put in for £25,000, you want to speak to the investor and say, look, £25,000, keep 10% as a contingency in case you need to use that money for something that maybe unforeseen. These are things that I didn't know when I first started, and stuff that I've taken with me and grown on. And the more experience you're going to get, the better deals you're going to start sourcing, the better investors you're going to start dealing with, because the more credibility you get, the more people start to notice, and people start to speak to you, and they want to be around someone that's doing really well. And you're showing everyone what you're doing. Now, being transparent is the most important thing for me personally, and it's something that when I look back to when I first started, there wasn't really anyone in the game that I could look at and say, oh, everything they're saying makes perfect sense, and they're showing me the ugly stuff as well. I never really had that. So that's what I'm trying to give to obviously you guys, and I'm talking about an experience that I had when I saw my first deal, which didn't go to plan at all, but I was lucky because it was a decent deal where we could afford to spend a bit more on the renovation, because the end value was going to be there, and we managed to get just over the end value of what I predicted. So the investor only ended up leaving, I think it was a pretty good deal, right? So they ended up leaving like 6 or 7 grand in the deal. But because I was sold on the dream of, you should be only selling all money out by refurbished refinance deals, them deals are hard to find. And if you're finding them deals, you want to be trying to raise the money yourself. Because if you can sell a deal for 5k, but the investor's going to make 15 grand and they refinance it, you need to try and partner with them. But yeah, that's maybe for another video, and hope you enjoyed that, guys. See you in the next one.